Hello, my name is Anthony Salamone. I'm the Managing Director of European Merchants, a political analysis firm based in Edinburgh, which I founded in 2019. I'm a political scientist. My areas of expertise focus on international relations, EU politics and institutions, and Scottish UK politics. My work also covers US politics, European small states, and modern diplomatic strategy. As part of my work, I lead the Scottish State Builder project, European Merchants' pioneering initiative to bring detailed expert analysis to major questions on independence. My most recent report, Scotland's Global Blueprint, sets out the path to build the institutions for a successful, values-based foreign policy under independence. Today, from my perspective as a political scientist, I'm going to talk about how I would think about defining Scotland's defence and security strategy as an independent state. First, on the principles for Scottish defence and security. I think it's important to be upfront that independence would be a transformational process for Scotland, requiring significant change across government and society. We should be honest that defence in particular is an area in which the current Scottish government has almost no role. Of course, we have active military personnel in Scotland, and we have veterans in Scotland, including participants at this conference. We also have current and retired civil servants with expertise in defence, security, and intelligence. However, in terms of the institutions of Scotland, which is the focus of the State Builder project, we must recognise that the new government of Scotland, as it would have to create the defence and security institutions of the state largely from scratch. By contrast, the Scottish government does have expertise in some respects in security, through policing and justice. While perhaps daunting, creating these new institutions presents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a Scottish state which reflects Scotland's values, interests, and priorities. Ensuring the safety and security and all their various facets of the public is often taken as the first priority of the state, and Scotland would be responsible for these in its own right. I would like to see Scotland, as a European state and a European small state, adopt a values-based and holistic approach to defence and security, just as it would on its foreign policy. These days, we talk about new challenges and corresponding methods to protect the state, from hybrid threats to non-traditional defence and security challenges, biosecurity, as we are all experiencing right now with the pandemic, to cybersecurity, to climate security. These are essential areas which require appropriate investment by the Scottish state. Nevertheless, one can also object to the increasing securitization of public affairs, such as we have seen with respect to migration here in Europe and elsewhere. I share that concern, where securitization promotes or leads to hostile policies, defensiveness, and misguided interpretations of the national interest. I am sure that we can all agree that Scotland should not entertain such a course. At the same time, we must recognise the real European and global defence and security environment which Scotland faces right now, and would face as an independent state. Worryingly, I have often detected a latent premise within our independence debate, the idea that, with the right amount of bon ami, we could be great friends with every state in the world. We, in this audience, know that is not the case. As a state, Scotland would face real defence and security challenges from state actors, not just the non-state actors whom we increasingly speak of these days. Regardless of the fact that Scotland would start with a positive or benign international reputation, if only for the fact that we have not been a state for so long, and therefore not been judged as one in respect of global affairs. That reality connects to the definition of Scotland's defence and security strategy. If, as I imagine it would be the case, the core priorities of the defence, security, and intelligence institutions of the state are to preserve Scotland as a free democratic state, and to protect the Scottish way of life, that demands consideration of the full challenges that we would face. In line with the Constitution and its defining principles, such as civilian control of the military, we would develop the means to protect our democracy and our state. That would include the integrity of our elections and our democratic process, the maintenance of a free and independent media while also combating misinformation and disinformation, and maintaining the functionality of our infrastructure, including energy, water, and other public utilities. More broadly, fulfilling those core priorities also depends on the European and global systems which exist, which sustain us in so many respects, and which are changing. The success or failure of multilateralism, the future of the rules-based global system, and the evolution of the United Nations would all matter to our defence and security as much as to our foreign policy. Underpinning all of these developments is the ongoing competition between starkly different political value systems, which will shape the kind of world that we inhabit. On these questions, diplomacy would be at the centre of our EU and international action. I would envisage and hope that the Department of Defence and the Department of European and External Relations, as I would call Scotland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, would work very closely together in a spirit of genuine partnership. That cooperation would be imperative. We are too small to have American-style turf wars. That leads me to a recurring theme in our independence debate: neutrality. In today's world, neutrality is an outmoded and ineffective concept. Scotland is not neutral now, and it would make no sense to become neutral in the 2020s. As I have outlined, we would face challenges and threats across a range of areas, from traditional defence to the future of the UN and international law. We should not seek to declare ourselves neutral on any of these areas. For us, that would, I think, be an abdication of responsibility at a crucial time in world history. Fundamentally, neutrality would not protect us from anything, and only diminish our role in the world. So that takes us to perhaps the most notable and consequential defence and security question that Scotland would face as a state: our relationship with NATO. It is abundantly clear that NATO is a contentious subject within the independence movement, and even many of those who ostensibly support Scottish membership of NATO often whisper that view, at best. Nevertheless, I suspect that a clear majority of the Scottish public as a whole, beyond the independence movement, would support NATO membership. I approach the question of NATO membership in a threefold way. First, Scotland's defence and security requirements. In our immediate neighbourhood and on wider regional and global security issues, the alliance, which includes most EU member states, would support Scottish defence and security. Second, the defence and security of Scotland's allies, principally in the first instance, the other EU member states. NATO is foundational to the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, of Poland, and of others. Scotland, being part of NATO, would support them in their security and defence. Third, Scotland's role in the EU and the world beyond our direct defence and security. Cooperating through NATO with EU and non-EU allies would enhance Scotland's impact in the world. On all three measures, it's clear to me that an independent Scotland should join NATO. Being part of NATO would not conflict with Scotland's aspirations to contribute to global peacebuilding, whether through UN peacekeeping or other peace-related roles, as Norway, Canada, and other NATO members evidently demonstrate. I very much support the principle of Scotland being a nuclear weapons-free state, and I find that completely achievable while also being part of NATO. At the same time, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, has also featured in our debate. The treaty has laudable aspirations which I imagine we can all support. However, honestly, given that all NATO members are outside the TPNW, it seems clear to me, at present at least, that NATO membership and the TPNW are incompatible. Our public debate currently does not account for this reality, and it needs to. If Scotland becomes independent, this will certainly not be the only question for which all the options available present some form of difficulty, but its choice is still required. In building the Scottish state, I think it would be vital to ensure that its political institutions operate with a genuine regard to the evolving views of the public. As I have proposed in Scotland's Global Blueprint, any application for Scotland to join an international organisation should require approval from the Parliament of Scotland. Accordingly, the Parliament would have to approve NATO membership for it to happen. Should differences of opinion make it warranted, it would also be possible to hold a NATO membership referendum to determine whether Scotland joined NATO. Deciding Scotland's approach on NATO should happen during the transition to independence. And as part of that transition, provided we agreed on NATO membership, it would be important to determine interim arrangements with NATO and the UK on the Scotland-NATO relationship at the point of independence, to cover from that point until Scotland's eventual accession to NATO. I hope and expect that Scotland, as an independent state, would seek to join the European Union. Defence and security cooperation are integral aspects of being part of the EU. As I set out in Scotland's EU blueprint, Scotland's EU accession process could reasonably take 4 to 5 years, from point of application to point of accession. It would be beneficial for Scotland's pre-accession relationship with the European Union, which I have recommended to be an EU-only association agreement, at least initially, to include appropriate defence and security cooperation, in addition to wider foreign policy cooperation. After accession, Scotland would fully participate in EU policies on defence and security. This work will take a multitude of forms. Scotland will be part of the EU's Common Security and Defence Policy, the CSDP. Officials and personnel would participate in council institutions, including the Political and Security Committee and the EU Military Committee. On wider internal security, Scotland would be part of various EU agencies and initiatives, including Europol, Eurojust, and, I hope, the Schengen Information System. Incidentally, our discussion here reinforces the importance of Scotland being part of the non-border aspects of the Schengen acquis, even if we are not part of the Schengen area, to maintain the common travel area with the UK, Ireland, and the other participants. Defence is an area where the EU is looking to do more, along with foreign policy. These developments are connected with the defining debates in Brussels and EU capitals on the concept of European strategic autonomy, including what it means in practice, and its place in the general future direction of the European Union. As a new member state, Scotland would be an integral participant in these debates. As I have noted in some of my work, we are currently disadvantaged because Scottish politics is largely, if not wholly, disconnected from these crucial European debates. What would Scotland's position be on European strategic autonomy? On the development of wider European defence? What would Scotland's contributions be to European security? These are foundational questions related not just to Scotland's place in the EU, but our defence and security strategy. And here again, answers would be needed. Finally, it's important to consider Scotland's bilateral relationship with the United Kingdom on defence and security, how these two states would cooperate together. Conceptualizing the transition to independence requires significant work, and the next report in the State Builder project will cover the pathway to independence after an independence referendum. In my strong view, Scotland should aspire for positive and constructive bilateral relations with the UK on defence and security as on other areas. Scotland should approach the relationship that way, regardless of the approach which the UK would take. While the mechanics of Scotland's separation and independence are still to be established, future defence and security cooperation could be part of the Principal Treaty, or it could be established through a freestanding agreement. Either way, this cooperation would surely function through the broader institutions that would be created to facilitate the new bilateral relationship. Naturally, these institutions and that cooperation would evolve in the decades after independence. The exact shape of that cooperation would be determined by the circumstances at the time. If we envisage a scenario in which Scotland has become independent, Scotland after a period is part of NATO and the UK is part of NATO, the two states are part of the Common Travel Area along with Ireland, and both states have committed to working together to manage their shared island, we can see opportunities and indeed necessities for good bilateral cooperation on defence and security and on other issues. With Scotland as an EU member, such cooperation would of course be shaped by and need to accord with the relationship between the EU and the UK. Scotland and the UK would have markedly different EU and foreign policies. That would be a principal reason why Scotland was becoming independent. Cooperation should still be possible, and Scotland should endeavour to foster it. The emphasis should be on working through institutions, through NATO, the Common Travel Area, trilateral institutions with Ireland, and bilateral institutions directly between Scotland and the UK. Scotland's defence and security under independence are complex and vital issues. They require purposeful and detailed consideration. So much more remains to be discussed, areas which I haven't addressed today, including Scotland's contributions to UN peacekeeping operations, and our other security and democracy efforts, such as through the OSCE, the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Just as within independent Scotland's wider role in the European Union and the world, a successful defence and security would depend on integration within government and state institutions of areas which have traditionally been distinct from each other. Where the Scottish state took such a values-based, holistic and integrated approach, I am confident that Scotland could meet its defence and security requirements. So, there are some thoughts on defining Scotland's defence and security strategy. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference.